So a lot of my videos are based on an essay or at least a thought that I've been having for a couple of years, and I'm sort of paraphrasing them into the camera for you. But this one is much more explicitly based on an essay. I'm actually just going to read the essay to you before giving some final thoughts, because I felt there was no real way for me to make this any more concise or any more to the bone than it was written on the page here, and I think this was pretty spot on, so I'm just going to read it to you directly actually. Civic virtue and smartphones. I'm going to make my thesis very explicit right up front here because I don't want to be misconstrued. I believe a utopian society, the kind of society we should strive for, is one where the individual, every individual, is effortlessly capable. I want those words and that phrasing to hang in your mind. The individual should be effortlessly capable. I'll explain why. Let's imagine for a moment a conservative who believes the biggest problem these days, because there's always a different these days for the conservatives to be mad about, is how incapable people are. They're upset because people are weak. They're sensitive, lazy, short attention spans, which are all, if you really think about it, just synonyms for weakness or types of weakness. And they start saying that, if you think about it, modern technology has actually been a net negative for us humans. Because having our food delivered means we don't have to do the work to go and get it ourselves. Having our clothes, our food, everything made for us means that everything we interact with is a black box. We all own a smartphone, but no one knows how to fix it or what makes it tick. We all own all kinds of appliances, TVs, microwaves, cars, the plumbing and electricity in our house. But because we can rely on others to help us fix these things, we're never forced to become more capable individuals. So if you think about it, it's not just technology that's part of the problem, but the market too. Because economic specialization means that knowledge becomes clustered. Handfuls of elites, a different bunch for every niche, every skill, every industry, hold the relevant knowledge of how to do what they do best, and everyone becomes dependent. Even if you yourself are depended on in one area, say for example you're a techie and you know how to fix computers, you're going to be dependent on a mechanic to fix your car for you. Now, by that logic, if you think about it, hierarchy is part of the problem too, because dependency is only a problem insofar as it creates a hierarchy. At my former job, when I started, we each drove only one route. In other words, each driver was a specialist in one part of New Hampshire. One person delivered to Milford, another to Hudson, another to Plymouth, and so on. This quote-unquote division of labor, as Marx called it, created a lot of real problems for us. Whenever anyone called out sick, we had no one to cover their route, for example. There were also a number of skills that were centralized in the hands of management, but management eventually found that it was bad for everyone to have workers dependent on them. The managers hated it because they needed to answer questions from their employees all day, and because their employees were functionally idiots. Their employees had been deprived of the knowledge necessary to behave as anything else. Meanwhile, employees hated having to ask so many questions, hated being seen as idiots, and hated whenever a manager wasn't in for the day, and no one knew how to do the specialized tasks management had delegated to itself. So they did cross-training. Now, if you're a conservative, this might make you confident in your politics. You'll think to yourself, I'm not one of these tech bro libertarian types. I don't like Amazon. I don't like Uber. I'm an old-fashioned conservative. I believe in simpler technology and capable individuals who are truly self-reliant. It's a useful insight. It's a big part of what distinguishes conservatism as it actually exists as a tradition from pure libertarian voluntarism. The problem, of course, is that human beings are not merely means to an end, we are also ends unto ourselves. I remember thinking to myself, when listening to my more conservative coworkers talk, they would say things like, nobody ever wants to work these days, and I would think, good. No one should want to work. Working sucks. Isn't the whole goal that if we develop sufficiently advanced technology, it can steal our jobs so that we don't have to work anymore? Or at least so that we don't have to work nearly as hard or as many hours a week? If technology just creates fancier and fancier doodads for me to fool around with in the handful of hours I spend awake that I'm not working during, that's not a future I want to live in. The tricky question for the 21st century is, how do we retain the noble pursuit of making individuals as capable as possible, while also maintaining an awareness that the end goal is to make life easier on all of us? Well, here's where the sci-fi comes in. Transhumanism is a philosophy devoted entirely to the idea of using technology to modify and improve human beings. If it's possible to improve the human mind, to make it simultaneously smarter, more focused, more rational, more creative, then such an improvement would allow us to be productive effortlessly. When I was in college for game design, my favorite topic of research was the relationship between video games and education. Because one of the amazing things about video games is the way that they teach you. Ask any game designer and they'll tell you the best games are ones with invisible tutorials, where the act of playing the game in and of itself teaches and prepares you for the next part of the game. Good game designers pay close attention to what's called the difficulty curve of a game. That's the rate of how quickly the game moves from basic tasks to more complex ones. That way, as the player becomes increasingly capable, the game becomes just hard enough to provide a stimulating challenge that without getting so hard that it's frustrating for them. I believe a utopian life would feel like playing a video game. You would have constrained agency, choice, and action, but also, ideally, you would never come across a challenge you can't handle. Yet things would never get so easy you would get bored. Also, I believe human beings crave meaning. We long not to just be creatures that enjoy the world, but also to be seen as providing value for our fellow human beings. We feel better when we're capable and productive. I've often thought that I wish writing these Facebook posts was as easy as watching political YouTube videos. That I wish creating my own music was as easy as listening to it. That creating a video game was as easy as playing one, etc. So how does this all look in practice? Well, we need to start with a criticism of how production happens in our society. And when I say production, I mean production of all kinds, from ideas and art to physical goods. We need to make production decentralized, and we need to maximize the benefits of our tools to our capacities as individuals while minimizing their harms. If it's true that smartphones shorten our attention spans, we need to find a way to stop them from doing that while maintaining their capacity as a virtually infinite source of knowledge. We need to fight not only for the right to repair, but also for more of our products to be designed to be repaired easily by hobbyists and ordinary consumers. We need more 3D printers and household production and less mass production. We need more education in the trades, more hands-on learning, and more DIY. I think the punk scene has, if you look at it, really already mastered this balance without ever laying it out in these terms. In punk culture, there's a strong strain of DIY and of being handy, and it coexists seamlessly with an ethic of cooperation and unconditional support for those without. In the punk community, the libertarian, the conservative, and the socialist fuse together into a hybrid of ordinary people just doing whatever they've found works best to help one another get by. So that's where the essay ends, but it's also kind of an uneasy ending, I think, right? Because I think it doesn't really fully answer the questions at play, right? Some of the answers are like transhumanism, which is a little bit out there still. And some of the other answers are basically to sort of lean into a kind of conservatism, not in the blaming of people for their own incapability, but in the sense of making more people be makers, making more people be productive in a way. I think that's the closest you can get to a constructive solution of this problem. But I think in the long run, the more important point the essay makes is to just kind of keep in mind that there are these two poles constantly pulling at humanity, right, in all times, and in all of our politics, and in our personal lives. There are these two tugs and pulls. The pull between a person as an end unto ourselves, right, which is, maybe we can sit alone and watch TV all day, or something like that, and maybe that's actually fun and satisfying, because we like to be entertained, we like to have fun, we like for things to be made for us to consume. We like to just eat delicious food and spend time with friends, right? And then the other tug is not just the necessity of work, but also the meaning that we find in work and the need to be capable of rising to a challenge if it arrives. I found so often in my life that trying to be this sort of left-wing, I don't dream of labor, fuck work, fuck the system man type of a person, it doesn't necessarily leave you with the skills necessary to, do your taxes, for example. At some point, you are going to have to do your taxes. At least in the world we live in now. Should the government do our taxes? Yes. But right now, the government doesn't do your taxes. And you got to find some way to be able to do them. And it's a problem if you're not capable. It is a problem if the entertainment you consume by swiping endlessly on TikTok, if that does destroy your attention span, then maybe it's, TikTok is good in its own right. Maybe you have a lot of fun, you enjoy it, it gives you dopamine, it entertains you, you like that. But then maybe it becomes a problem if the big responsibilities in your life you're not capable of achieving. And I think I'm especially prone to recognizing this because I think I have ADHD or autism or something in my brain. I got some sort of a disability thing going on. And it makes it very, very difficult to rise to the occasion. And I know that my life has been very hard because of this. You might think off the top of your head that it would be very fun to just do whatever is most fun at all times and to shirk your responsibilities. But it actually sucks. It actually sucks to shirk your responsibilities automatically in favor of what is most fun immediately in that moment, and have to live with the constant shame that you can't seem to stop doing that. It's actually unbearable to live that way. So I think on one hand, trying to fix that, maybe the short form version of transhumanism available to you is fucking Ritalin. Maybe Ritalin is the transhumanist cure that we have right now in the present. Maybe that's useful to change you as an individual, make you more capable in some ways. But also, maybe it would be nice if our society made things easier on us, but also, maybe it would be nice if society made us more capable, right? Like I said, education in the trades would be great, to get young people who maybe have ADHD or autism and maybe aren't so inclined towards sitting in a boring environment all day. Make them weld, make them do something dopaminergic, make them work with their hands. Then you're providing value and being productive to your community and to your society, and that shame goes away, and you're able to make a living for yourself, and that's a good thing. So yeah, I think we need a civic virtue. I think we need a return of civic virtue in a lot of ways.